blog, reporting to you from Bob Cajun on a fairly mild Sunday evening in February. Okay, I picked up this today, February 19th, from Tyler Durden on Zero Hedge. These are times of general corruption, and I think it really does sum it up quite well. So I'd like to read this entire article for your listening pleasure. I'll leave you with one set of numbers that I found today, which is just an absolute for this whole thing. In 2015, Wall Street bonuses, not regular compensation, bonuses, 7 years after they were bailed out with the public purse, totaled $29.4 billion. The total compensation paid to every single person in this country who makes minimum wage totaled $14 billion. The era of neoliberalism is over. The era of neo-nationalism has just begun. When historians look back on this period of the last 40 years and diagnose what went wrong, they might do worse than to conclude that at the root of it was a general failure of character from the top down. The replacement of honour and duty with egoism and greed at the most honoured of civic virtues was a long and slow process. It took root and was nurtured in a portion of the population that was served by it during the Reaganomics Revolution, but eventually spread to those institutions and groups that had generally provided a bulwark for freedom and justice against the perennial immorality of the greedy. Although they were certainly not the root cause of it, the Clintons played a prominent role in sealing the deal between the political and the financial class and throwing the whole thing into higher gear. They made political corruption, which heretofore had been hidden in the closets, fashionable. Indeed, it may not be too much to say that they were to soft corruption in politics what Henry Ford was to automobile production. They certainly didn't invent it, and were probably not the worst compared to some of their colleagues across the aisle, but they industrialized it and knocked down the last bastions of public conscience in the process by showing how well greed could pay off while still maintaining some semblance of public respectability. There will be a 3-day weekend in the US markets because of President's Day on Monday. There was some surprisingly good soft data this week in the Philly Fed and the Empire Manufacturing reports. Let us see if those translate into good, hard economic numbers. The crux of the problem is the huge imbalance between corporate power and the ability of the workers to achieve increasing wages. Without increasing wages, broader aggregate demand in the form of consumption cannot be sustained. This is what I have always said, if you are not earning enough, how on earth can you afford to go out there and buy the stuff they're producing? It was sustained during a long period of wage stagnation by innovative debt instruments associated with the housing bubble, and was greatly encouraged by the financial sector and their servants in the political and professional classes. The fraud which they helped to perpetuate was conscious and premeditated. They crafted specific financial offerings towards that purpose. However, in the aftermath of the housing bubble collapse, the ability and willingness of the average American to go into debt for ordinary consumption is reluctant to say the least. At least half the nation is living paycheck to paycheck with little or no savings. This is not going to end well or easily as you might expect. However, the elites have been winning for so long and are so full of themselves and so firmly committed to their schemes that I think they will finally let the whole thing hit the wall in some way and then make the people another deal that they cannot refuse, as they have done with the bank bailouts in 2008. And that is where the right preparations and willingness to do what is required of this generation will be most important. No one ever said that it would be easy, or that we would be going to heaven on feather beds. I find the current political situation to be as bad as I thought it would be when I forecasted it about 10 years ago. The worst is yet to come. The corruption in the system is becoming much more apparent. The extreme biases in the mainstream media in favour of their political owners' factions is fairly obvious. The liberal establishment, in their zeal to excuse themselves and their failure to support the working class, is embracing a kind of McCarthyism with an ease that is almost astonishing in its hypocrisy. The hypocrisy on display at MSNBC is almost as embarrassing as that on Fox News. That the Wall Street Democrats brought their own political failure on themselves by their strong and enduring pivot to the wealthier urban professionals is something that escapes their consciousness. And on the other hand, the Republican establishment has gone bananas in their service to greed. I figure if they are able to beat down Trump like the Democrats beat down Bernie, then we are in for a real reckoning. This is nothing new. Indeed, this resembles the America of the past more than most people realize. Our education is slanted and poor. Our national self-image is a masterpiece of public relations. The discussing of politics is fun and avoids having to make comments on what is certainly a confusing period in American economics. I try to stay on that topic, especially since so few are actually shedding light on it these days. But truth be told, money and politics are often about power, and never more as in times of general corruption, when might makes right, or at least the policy that they call right. This is the worst, most sluggish recovery we have seen in modern times here, but since it has a bipartisan stamp, it is difficult for some to wrap their politically black and white heads around it. And I hate to resort to it, but in historical times, what we are seeing is more like a class war from ages long ago than any kind of financial new era. The moneyed class turned to law and the thought leaders framing to their own benefit, and would now do anything they can to keep their ill-gotten gains. Wrap it up in a credibility trap and tie a bow around it, and here we are. You know, something that I have spoken about once or twice before is a little thing that happened, well, not so little, it was certainly little in the news, but the effect was absolutely gigantic, and that was the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act in 1999. Bill Clinton and Robert Rubin and Alan Greenspan repealed that act. And so what was the Glass-Steagall Act? So here we are, the Glass-Steagall legislation. The Glass-Steagall Act describes 4 provisions in the US Banking Act of 1933 that limit securities, activities and affiliations within commercial banks and securities firms. Okay, so what that basically means is that investment banks cannot get involved with street banks, cannot borrow their money, cannot buy them, be any part of them, because that's exactly what happened in 1929, or the period of time leading up to that, was these banks got together and they invested the money badly and lost it all, as we know. Now, the repealing of this act in 1999, it was only 8 short years, 2007, 2008, and exactly the same thing happened again. And it just goes to show you how important this single piece of legislation was, and to knock it out of the way, there is absolutely no doubt that Robert Rubin and Alan Greenspan knew exactly what they were doing. Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope I've enlightened you with that a little bit, and thank you very much to Zero Hedge. I can highly recommend visiting that channel. It is a great source of news. Okay, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off Sunday evening. Hope you have a great week coming up, and please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye now.